Hello and welcome to the October 22nd edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. My name is Tom Luongo. We have a lot to talk about. Today I want to talk about Italy. I've talked about Italy a lot in recent weeks, and I've written a lot about Italy. But over the weekend, we had a major advancement of the Italian budget talk debt narrative. On Friday, former Eurogroup president and former Dutch finance minister Jeroen Dijsselbloem was on CNBC and pretty much went nuclear. Now, what I mean by going nuclear is he effectively threatened financial warfare on Italy over its budget, which at this point has breached EU budgetary rules by targeting 2.4% deficit to GDP. What Dijsselbloem was doing, because he's no longer Eurogroup president, nor is he the Dutch finance minister. Former, but he's a bigwig and he's a big technocrat. So it's his job to basically signal to the markets what the EU stance is going to be, which in their talks with Italy over their budget and over the direction of the country and everything else, is effectively they're going to go to complete financial war with Italy. They're going to attempt to crash the Italian banks. He called on the market to discipline Italy. I find it funny that the ultimate EU socialist technocrat is calling on market discipline to discipline the Italians. But here's the gig. He who goes nuclear has already lost. Because when you go nuclear, you have no leverage other than I'm going to destroy you. And if you think that that's the way to victory, the path to victory, you're wrong. The path to victory is to remain very calm and say, look, I'm going to be willing to, let's talk about this. I have weapons. You know I have them, and you know I'm keeping them sheathed. You are unveiling all of your weapons and saying, this is what I'm going to do to you. And effectively, the EU is effectively threatening Italian banks with bail-ins of depositors as unsecured creditors and rising bond yields and all of it, right? And that he also went out of his way to overstate the Italian debt problem is mostly domestic. It's not. There's a lot of people, including the ECB and the Bundesbank and others, who own a lot of Italian debt. Because if they didn't, then there wasn't that. Then what is that big, huge $1 trillion Target 2 liability sitting on the ECB's balance sheet? That Mario Draghi, ECB president, has already said that if Italy wants to leave the union, which Italy has not put on the table at all. Matter of fact, they keep telling everybody over and over again they have no plan B to leave the euro or leave the EU. You hear this all the time out of Matteo Salvini, the leader of the League, and the leader of Five Star Movement, Luigi Di Maio, who literally just said this yesterday or today, that we have no plan B. But Mario Draghi keeps talking about, well, if Italy wants to leave the euro, they're going to have to pay off their Target 2 liability, right? Everybody at the EU is going nuclear. Everybody at the EU is putting maximal pressure on the Italians to knuckle under now. As Dijsselbloem said, look, and this is the important point, look, a lot of Italian pension funds and a lot of the Italian debt is owned by Italian banks as assets on their balance sheets and as assets of various Italian pension funds. So I was thinking about this earlier. I said, that's interesting that he brings that up. Because I've been thinking about the two main points of contention that the EU has with the Italian budget, which are two things. One, tax cuts, because, of course, tax cuts to the EU mean less money collected by Italy to pay the bondholders of their debt, right? That's what they think. They don't think that, cutting taxes will actually stimulate growth because, God forbid, we ever, practice rational economics in this world because, we're all Keynesians now who all believe in the paradox of thrift, which is the most ridiculous freaking thing next to global warming I've ever heard. Well, except maybe the lipid hypothesis, but that's a discussion for a different day. But tax cuts on the one hand and universal basic income on the other. Now, if you're threatening financial warfare, nuclear war on a member state, which is going to crash all the Italian banks and destroy the solvency of all of these Italian pension funds. Doesn't it make sense that there's a plan B to take care of the Italian people? To minimize the political unrest from the loss of the pension systems? Italy's been signaling for months what their plan is to deal with a bank implosion and to deal with an EU that goes nuclear on them. Universal basic income is that way of dealing with it. I'm not saying I agree with it philosophically. The hell with philosophically at this point. We're talking about raw, pragmatic power politics at this point, and real people being screwed by a system and a situation that they cannot get out of easily. Correct? It's not like Italy can leave the euro tomorrow, issue a new lira and be done with it, and then just, stiff all the bondholders. That's not going to happen. The situation's far more complex than that. It will take months, if not years, to work out if necessary. At the same time, the Italian leadership is talking about reforming the EU from within. Basically, in effect, allowing all of the Eurosceptic parties to take control of the European Commission presidency at next year's parliamentary election, and change all the banking rules and change all the finance rules and all the budgetary rules and everything else in order to allow more flexibility within the system, in order to allow for less competitive countries to remain competitive on the world stage. Because right now the single currency doesn't allow for that. It allows for Germany and Holland and Denmark and the Netherlands and the rest of them to outcompete, because their currencies are undervalued, the rest of Europe, where the euro is overvalued relative to their labor. That's what's going on. Okay, so now when you put all that together, the EU has no choice but to escalate, because Italy has all the advantage. Because, like it or not, there's that $1 trillion liability sitting out there, just gonna go boom. Moreover, tactically, politically, Salvini and Di Maio have been playing a beautiful game of good cop, bad cop. They've been doing it for over a year now. Okay. Last year, this time, no way was there 56% support of Italians to leave the European Union. But a recent poll from Euromonitor, I think it was Euromonitor, look it up, has 56% of Italians would back an Italy position on a referendum for leaving the EU. 56%. Brexit never polled that high. 56%. And every time Matteo Salvini goes up against the EU and lobs rhetorical truth bombs at them, his popularity rises. Now, don't think that they don't have a plan B. They do have a plan B. They're just saying that they don't have a plan B, because that is how they're allowing for the Italian people to make it their idea that they may need to leave the EU. And the best way to do so is to continue to allow people like Jeroen Dijsselbloem and Jean-Claude Juncker and Angela Merkel and the rest of them to hang themselves with their own words. And even Merkel has been suspiciously quiet and conciliatory towards the Italians during these budget negotiations. And because she understands what's going on. Because if you think back to Greece, if you don't think I'm right about this, think about Greece in 2015. In 2015, Wolfgang Schäuble and Angela Merkel were very calm dealing with the upstart Syriza coalition in Greece. They said, look, you're not leaving the euro. There's going to be no debt restructuring for you. There's going to be no this. There's going to be no that. There's going to be nothing. We're going to dictate terms to you, and that's just the way it's going to be. And Yanis Varoufakis went in there, tried to go in there, both guns blazing, and say, look, we should leave the euro. The best thing for Greece is to leave the euro. No. Greece had no leverage. Didn't have a popular support to leave the euro. Over 75% of Greeks, 70 to 75% of Greeks, had no interest in leaving the eurozone, had no interest in leaving the EU, even though that was the best path forward for Greece. Contrast, you have 56% of Italians now. That's a completely different situation. You have, between 5-star and the league, they have more than 60% of the Italian people support. Salvini's and the league are polling around 35%, and M5S is polling somewhere between 28 and 30%. So it's close to a supermajority where they could literally start, like, they could hold snap elections tomorrow and practically be guaranteed to push through constitutional changes. Constitutional changes. So you really have to think about the leverage here and who has it. Greece went nuclear in 2015 and got their bluff called and had to knuckle under and got crushed. While the EU, very calm, because they had all the leverage. Today, the EU is bluffing like they have all the leverage when they don't. What they have are really strong bail-in rules, which will, if used as a nuclear option on Italy, ensure that capital runs screaming from the European Union. Because who in their right mind would ever put $1 into a European bank that can be seized overnight, sold for $1, have all of your money, have your entire investment deprecated to zero on a Sunday night while you're asleep, wake up the next morning and you've been wiped out, and the bank that you used to invest in, have an investment in, was sold to somebody else for $1? Because if you don't think that's possible, that's exactly what happened to shareholders of Banco Popular 2 years ago when this and they were sold to Santander, or a year and a half ago. Yeah, it was last summer. Sorry, not 2 years ago, but last summer. That's exactly what happened. And if you don't understand that that is actually part of what's continuing to keep an investment deficit on the there's an investment deficit into the European Union. It's been there for years now, and it's going to continue that way. This is going to be fun. Remember, whoever goes nuclear doesn't have any leverage. That's the takeaway, and that's why Italy has already won its budget battle with the European Union. And it's also why all of the current cast of technocrats, all on a very short leash and all on a very short timeline. Fun to watch. It could be painful. It's going to be interesting at the very least. All right. That's the Gold, Goats, and Guns short news for today, Monday, October 22nd. I hope you liked what you heard today. If you did, give a like and subscribe down below. That would be fantastic. Also, click notifications for when I go live and do live streams on Monday nights at 8 p.m. and Friday nights at 8:30. You can follow my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com, and you can support my work over at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns. You guys have a great afternoon. Enjoy the parade, as it were. Keep your stick on the ice.